Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing the second part of Thomas Sowell's book, Basic Economics, and so we're going to be going over industry and commerce. This is the second video in my series that will be discussing the entirety of his book, or at least the main points that I distilled from it. So without further ado, let's dive in. To start off our discussion on industry and commerce, we will start with the rise and fall of businesses. So businesses succeed and fail due to a lot of different factors. Now, obviously businesses try to make a profit, but it takes a whole lot of work just to break even. On average, a successful company profits about 5% annually. This 5% is after all expenditures like employees' salaries and benefits have been paid. The S&P 500 index, which you may have heard of before, tracks the 500 largest companies in the world. Investors who put their money into the S&P 500 grow their wealth on average by about 6 to 8% per year. Now, there is a difference between profits from sales and profits from investments. An investor should not simply look at just the profits from sales. A good investor has to consider the overall value of a company and take into consideration the sector in which it resides. A company's investment value reflects a number of things. First, it reflects how efficient they are at creating the products they do. It also reflects their investment in innovation. And finally, the investment value reflects the profits they get from sales. If a company discovers how to make their product more efficiently, then costs of manufacturing will be reduced. The money saved in manufacturing can then be invested elsewhere, like in research and development or R&D. Maneuvers like this are exactly what make companies well-oiled machines, and that's exactly what investors look for. One of the best ways for businesses to increase their profit is to increase production efficiency, which then allows them to charge less for their product. Hey, we figured out how to make this product for less money. Oh, really? It's the same product, but it costs less? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Done deal, my guy. Where do I sign? Those that don't innovate die.
They're dead.
The people who are paranoid about innovation and increasing their efficiency, those are the people who survive. And Bob Iger actually talked about that in his book, Ride of a Lifetime. It's a great business book, but he talks about his relationship with Steve Jobs when he was the CEO of Apple and how he was a relentless innovator. And Apple is a company worth over $2 trillion today. It's the biggest in the world. We can still see the impact of Steve Jobs on the company today, and they're the leader in technology right now. And Steve Jobs knew the value of creativity and innovation. I mean, Apple owned Pixar in the early days of the company. It was such a perfect marriage between Apple and Pixar because they were both companies that were constantly on the bleeding edge. Pixar pioneered animation as we know it today with classics like A Bug's Life and Toy Story. And obviously Apple changed the world with the iPhone. But those are just two companies that obviously heavily invested in innovation and efficiency and creativity, and look how the world was influenced by just those two companies. Let's move on to the role of profits and losses. Compared to capitalism, socialism is just inefficient. Capitalism's inefficiencies get weeded out by losses and bankruptcy, but inefficiency is built into socialism because the economy is centrally planned. The amount of products created in the American economy alone is so high, it would be irresponsible to task a government agency with the responsibility of tracking all of them. But this is what happens in economies that reside in socialist or communist societies. And Sowell details how those policies led to poverty and starvation in societies like the Soviet Union. Many people even today, according to Sowell, attribute high profits to high prices that are set by those who are motivated merely by greed. In reality, according to Sowell, most of the great American fortunes have been made as a result of someone figuring out how to reduce the cost of production, which therefore lowers the prices of their product, which lower prices result in more customers, so they get a greater market share. Henry Ford did this with automobiles. Rockefeller did it with oil, Carnegie with steel, and then you have Sears, Penny, and Walton who did it with department store chains and their various products that they have. So again, it's the profit on the whole investment that matters to the investor. When someone invests $10,000, what that person wants to know is what annual rate of return it will bring, whether it's invested in real estate, stocks, or bonds. So profits from sales matter, but they're not all that matter. It's the profit from the total capital that's been invested in the business that matters. That profit not only matters to those who receive it, but it matters to the economy at large. The difference in profit rates between all of these sectors across the economy, whether it's tech or pharmaceuticals, that's what causes the investments to flow in and out of each sector, or the profit rates. And eventually, the more money you invest in a certain sector, it'll go up and up and up, and it'll start to level off. And the money from that sector will leave and go somewhere else. It's like water seeking its own level. So in a free market economy, resources are allocated based on the changing profit rates in each sector. Topic number 3, the economics of big business. A lot of money is required to run a big business, obviously. A company like Apple, which I previously mentioned in the video, is so big that there are not enough investors who in their right mind would subsidize the company and take on its accompanying liability. Now, at the time of the making of this video, Apple's market value is, let me double check. Oh, Jesus, they got over 3 trillion. Damn. So they're the world's first $3 trillion company. Good for you, Apple. Okay, so nobody on their own has that kind of money, right? And even if they did, they wouldn't invest it all in Apple. That'd be stupid. So to incentivize people to grow companies like Apple, we have corporations. Corporations allow stockholders to keep their assets in the company separate from their own liability. As a corporation, Apple could go bankrupt, but stockholders would only lose the money they invested in Apple. A corporation's structure seeks to maximize returns for its shareholders. Now, at the top of the hierarchy sits a board of directors, and then below them you have a CEO, and then below them you have middle managers, and so on. The wealth of the people in these positions is tied directly to the company via their salary. Ideally, the people in these positions have been vetted and determined to give the company its best chance to succeed. This is why it's important for investors to look for companies that are run by good people rather than just good products. The incentive structure in place is there to entice the people working for the corporation to succeed to the best of their ability. Hopefully that results in profits for stakeholders and investors. Now, Sol notes that this corporate structure has been criticized for being too profit-driven and generous to CEOs and business managers, as some of their salaries are in the tens of millions of dollars. But Sol says it is precisely those salaries that provide the incentive for those people to do their job well. Okay, heating up. Let's get a little crazy with some regulation and antitrust laws. In an effort to prevent monopolies, the government creates commissions that regulate businesses from overcharging consumers. These commissions are staffed by people who run the industries that are being regulated. An unintended consequence of this is that the people who are serving in these government agencies, who are also a part of these industries, have a very obvious financial stake in making sure their own industry succeeds. So there's a bit of a conflict of interest. You're asked to regulate your industry, but at the same time, you're an employee or business owner in the industry, so you don't exactly want to be regulated all that much. Some antitrust cases exist because the government can't distinguish between fostering competition and helping competitors. A good example of this would be not allowing a chain store like Costco to buy their products in bulk if you consider it unfair that a smaller store couldn't do that. Sol points out that antitrust cases are sometimes won by the prosecution because they define market share so narrowly that the company in question would seem to own most, if not all, of the sales of that particular industry. But the actual definition of a monopoly here is key. We just saw this in the news recently when Microsoft tried to acquire Bethesda, and I believe they had a lawsuit in the UK, and they were bringing this against them as an antitrust lawsuit, saying that Microsoft was going to own too much of the market share in the video game industry. But if my memory is right, I believe Microsoft won that case, and they now own Bethesda. But a monopoly is not defined by its market share. So even if Microsoft were to sell 100% of the market share of whatever Microsoft creates, a monopoly is defined by Microsoft's ability to keep everyone else out. And as it stands, Microsoft does not have the ability to keep everyone else out of the video game industry, the computer industry, the technology industry. They don't have that ability. By the way, if you've gotten any value out of this video so far, please hit the like button. Comment down below. I would love to know your thoughts, and especially let me know if what I'm saying makes sense. I would love to be able to get feedback on that, on how I can communicate better in the future. And if you want to see more content, please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be releasing a part 3 in this series. Till then, let's get back to the content. The last bit I want to talk about is market and non-market economies. Sol makes the case that when it comes to the free market, we should intervene less. And by we, he means the government. This is a quote from the book. What can be done instead of intervening is to recognize that economic changes have been going on for centuries, and that there is no sign this will stop, or that the adjustments necessitated by such changes will stop. This applies to government, to industries, and to the people at large. End quote. One of the major themes of the book is that inequality is one of the consequences of any economic system ever put into practice. The reality is that they're winners and losers. Sol argues that when a government entity steps in and utilizes the scarce resources that have alternative uses to help big corporations, small businesses, or groups of disadvantaged individuals, those scarce resources go where the market didn't organically move them, right? They're getting moved by fiat, which we discussed in the first video, and the Fiat is some sort of official regulation, so they're not getting moved naturally by consumers. He notes that you must take from one group to give to another. The cause and effect relationships in the economy ought to be looked at much more carefully before we decide on economic policy. And make no mistake, to go back to monopolies for a second, monopolies are enemies of any economy. And that's what you get when an economy is centrally planned, one organization preventing others from influencing the economy. So that concludes the second part in this series. Again, hit the like button, comment down below, let me know your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you for part 3. Thanks.